Thanks for coming out here. Siggraph 2018. We're here at the Maxon booth. Always privileged to be here. I wanted to thank the Maxon team for getting not just me, but 3 of the members of Greyscalegorilla here at the stage to show you one of our favorite new versions of Cinema 4D, R20. Who's seen all the new features in R20? Who's pumped? Yeah, it's pretty crazy this year. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to show you our favorite new features. If you're not familiar with Greyscalegorilla, we've been teaching motion designers and 3D artists how to do their best work and helping them with tools and training for over 9 years now, almost 10. And so we're really excited to be here in our, I think, 9th Siggraph to show you even more of our favorite new stuff in Cinema 4D. Boop, 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 boop. So also, if you're not familiar with Greyscalegorilla, my name is Nick Campbell. This is Chad Ashley.
How you doing?
Give it up for Chad. Thank you, thank you. Give it up for Chris Schmidt as well.
Hello, everybody.
We're so excited to do this. It's going to be a fun presentation. It's also a big week here for Greyscalegorilla. We released, or we announced our biggest plugin we've ever made, and it's called LightKit Pro 3. Anybody used LightKit Pro in the past? Well, this is our obviously latest new version. It's rebuilt from the ground up to help motion designers and 3D artists light like a professional and light like a photographer. And we don't have a lot of time to get into it today, but it's created from the ground up to help you design and get intuitive with the way that you light. LightKit Pro was the way that Greyscalegorilla started, and we're really excited to get this brand new version out for you to play with. The renders are extra gorgeous, and Chad's been doing some great work with the renders, and Chris and the team has been doing amazing work with this plugin. And a big announcement, and we're going to get more into this next week, is that LightKit Pro 3 is actually working fully with not just physical render, but Octane, Redshift, and Arnold as well. So for those of you, thank you. Yeah, it's a big, big new version. Plenty of customers have been asking us for this, and we can't wait to show you more. If you want to learn more about LightKit Pro 3, go to our website, grayscalegorilla.com/Siggraph. You can sign up there. We're going to have plenty more next week to talk about. You can also sign up to our YouTube page where we have plenty of free tutorials. If you're interested in learning more about Cinema 4D and motion design and how to become a better 3D artist, this is where we've been posting a ton of great stuff, including Chris's latest video of all about R20 and all the new features. So there's the link in beautiful PowerPoint blue underline just for you. If you click on it with your finger, I think it goes to the thing. But
I love that link. So it's beautiful.
That's for next week. We're going to get started here with Cinema 4D R20. This release has got me like giddy about Cinema 4D, the way that dynamics and the way that MoGraph back in the day got me like so excited about the possibilities. And I was thinking about it this morning, like what does the new version really mean? I think possibilities is what my brain came to, is like the ability to do brand new things we couldn't do with Cinema 4D before. So let's jump around. We're going to show you our favorite new features, starting with Chris. Do you want to start us off here?
Going to kick us off.
All right. Please, I'll introduce. Please welcome Chris Schmidt to show you one of his favorite new features of Cinema 4D R20. Give it up for Chris.
Hi there, everybody. We have a lot to cover and not a lot of time to do it because there are so many super fun new features. So we are going to go ahead and dive right on into a very basic scene file. We are going to be talking about fields. So what are fields?
What are fields, Chris?
Let's find out.
I'm glad you asked.
Well, an intuitive way to think about it is fields have decoupled the concept of a fall off from an effector, but but not just effectors, also deformers and vertex maps and tons of stuff all over Cinema 4D. But let's start out with a super basic scene and talk about some basics just to give you an idea of some of the more advanced things we're going to tackle in a minute. So I'm going to start by making a plane effector. I'm going to drop it as a child of this plane. You see, got lots of subdivisions. It's going to push it up into the air. Let's go ahead and tell it that this is now a deformer. You're going to see it jump up, or actually it's going to jump to the side, and we have to say that the transform space is on effector, so it's just pushing it up. It's kind of like a displaced deformer right now. Now everything looks the same, exactly the way it's always been, but if you click on the fall off tab, it now looks completely different. This is now a fields tab. Now, this is like double the power of MoGraph as far as I'm concerned. There are so many crazy new combinations, so much fun new stuff to do. But you can still treat it the way it used to be if you want to, ease into it. And another way of easing into this is this type of setup that I have here. Think of things on a two-dimensional plane here. Things are flat. You don't start on a complex model. Start on something simple. Get familiar with some of the concepts. So starting with some familiar concepts here. Let's click on this field objects drop down here, and we can go ahead and do something like create a spherical field. And this is very similar to the way it used to be, where there'd be a spherical setting here, but now we have it as a separate object. And we can do things like jumping into our remapping. We can change the fall off here, which is linear right now. We can move it around. Now, before you would have been moving around the plane effector, but now I'm just moving around this individual field. And we can change our contour here. Go to this drop down. We have contour mode. We can set this to something like quantize, and we can add additional steps. Which
The wedding cake.
yeah, so nice. And we can just move that around, and it's going to be updating, moving around, looking great. We can jump to a curve, and now we can grab our nice little curve here and change the fall off of it.
There we go.
There.
Yeah, we're talking.
And then we got the basic settings, change the overall size of it. But where things start getting interesting is if we go and we make a duplicate of this thing, and now I can grab this and scoot it off to the side. Let's go to the plane and apply the second one as well. Now you're going to see it jump over here because there are now blending modes, and this is very much like After Effects or like Photoshop, or even in cinema when you did some of the more advanced material stuff, you could combine things. So right now the blending mode is set to normal, which means this spherical field is overriding the one underneath it. But we can go ahead and change that to something like add. And now we have two different spherical fields. We can go ahead and click on one of these spherical fields and change it to something like a box. And now we have a box fall off on there. But you can see as I move this around, the two of them will combine and merge.
That's
and
awesome.
They blend. We have all these different blending modes, so we can add them, we can subtract them, we can set a minimum. Let's go ahead and click on subtract, and now you can see I can subtract out this square shape from the circle shape. We can go ahead and rearrange this, and I can say, you know what? I want that to be normal. I want to subtract the circle shape, the spherical shape, from our box shape. Go ahead and grab our spherical field, pull this over, and we're going to erase that out. We can combine so many different ones. There are so many amazing ways that these can combine. And we are not even scratching the surface here, just for fun. Why don't we go ahead and click on the shader field, get rid of the box. We'll just click on the basic shader field here, feed in a Cinema 4D noise, and let's make sure that this is set to normal. And boom, now it's feeding in a noise that we could then go into, click animate, hit play, and now that noise is going around. We can change the scale. All this is live, interactive, just fun, and we're still just using a plane effector. So it's about the way these things start combining that it gets really interesting.
That's what was interesting to me, was understanding that it wasn't necessarily which effector you used, it's how you can use simple effectors with complex fields to create these new looks.
Completely new, unlimited combinations. They layer up and layer up. I just want to show you two more basic concepts before we jump into maybe a little bit more advanced one. Because this isn't just about combining old fields here. Let's go ahead and set that to normal. It is also about these other two menus, which are our field layers and our modifier
That's
layers.
Super powerful stuff right
so
there.
just to get some motion in here, I'm going to go ahead and just throw a quick vibrate tag on. Just get some really quick basic motion going. Click on the old vibrate. Let's turn that on. Let's set this to maybe 444, 444. Slow it down quite a bit, 0.3. And now if I go ahead and hit play, this should just be wiggling around in space. Okay, cool.
Don't worry, Signal will be ready for R20.
But if we jump into our fall off, we can click on some interesting combinations, ones that you might be familiar with, like something like a delay. So what this is going to do is smooth it out, and we can start smoothing this out quite a bit. And now you can see it's kind of fading up as it moves over, and it's kind of adding up to catch up to it again, just smoothing out the overall effect. But we can go to something like spring, and now it's going to be jumping around, kind of doing all these layers, and depending on the speed you set it to, it's going to combine in all these fun ways, and we'll do a little bit more of that later.
That's awesome.
So I love the delay. But we also have something like the decay, and this has opened up so many possibilities. As soon as I play, you're going to see that there's a little bit of a tail chasing this around, and as I start increasing this to larger amount, let's give ourselves some more frames here.
Decay is great.
Decay is so amazing. You see it's like a tail chasing this thing around. And if we crank the strength up all the way to 100%, it is now just growing that effect on. It's an additive process. Now I'm doing this just with a plain spherical field, but this could just as easily be a noise moving around. And that noise would, whenever a noise is pushing it up, that will stay there forever. But we could also, maybe there's just a little bit of fade on there. So now it's all going to slowly snake away as it goes and still draw on this new one. They just combine in so many amazing ways.
And you can subtract that too, right? You could add another field to subtract from that.
And we are going to do that right now, I believe. So, do we go right into okay, actually, the basic one was the Spherify. So in addition, we were just kind of pushing stuff up into the air. But I want to talk a little bit about this scene. In fact, let's open up this one. So I've got a basic setup here, and now in addition, before we're using a plane effector, pushing everything just up, but now I've got a spherify, and the spherify inside the spherify, which normally is just going to completely override your entire scene. Everything is going to be utterly taken over.
Right. Spherified.
Yeah, it's going to be spherified, and it's going to suck the entire setup down into absolutely nothing. So we can crank that strength up all the way, and we can tell the. Let's see. I think I've got the. In the Spherify, we go to fall off on the field, and we got a solid in there. But if I turn it off, you see that the Spherify is just sucking everything in. Now I'm actually going to put a solid in here, which is going to erase it out. Now the field, this fall off isn't affecting at all. But if I go and turn on to my Spherify field, which I fed in, you see the Spherify is now, it has a fall off that will go to the center. So that's pretty straightforward as well. If I play, that's going to move around, and we get this cool effect, but it's just a Spherify with a fall off. But now we combine that with something like a delay that we were just talking about, and now you can see it's very smoothly transitioning into that as it moves around. Go ahead and turn on a decay, which is set all the way up to 98. So now you see that there's all this feedback behind it where it's constantly trying to fade back to its old position. We go ahead and turn on a second delay here, so we've got some springiness at the end. So you see when it snaps back to its final position, it's got some nice overlap. So now we take that and we do something. I'm going to hide it. So you see it's a very low poly version of that. So now we take something like that, and I'm going to unhide this plane, and we get this crazy look. You can see right off the bat, I've got a whole bunch more subdivisions.
What just happened?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. So this is the plane, but what is happening is I've applied a material, and that material is being fed by this vertex color tag. And this vertex color tag is just this plane dragged in as a source. And so every one of those low poly points is now being brought in as a fall off. So every individual point has a fall off of 9 units. So I can drag that up, drag it down, and now you see just based on this vertex map, all that fun motion we were getting from that kind of low poly thing that overlapped and whatnot, we're now feeding that up into this other unrelated plane in all ways. So now it's like one plane is being used as a deformer for a different one. Now it's just applying there.
Looks like particles.
Yeah, so that's super crazy by itself. But we go ahead and turn on this plane effector, and now I'm using those same points with the same fall off to push everything up into the air a little bit. And we can just go ahead and start turning.
So that other file that you opened, is that basically how this was built?
Yes, so we can jump to this final one, and it's just all that stuff combined where these are pushed up, it's nice and shiny, and we've also got some displacers with the same type of fall off, and this stuff just layers up, and it's just so insane where this is just like, I was sitting down for like 20 minutes, and it's like, whoa, look at this weird, crazy thing I made just by combining, and you look at this hierarchy, like super clean, there's not much going on. You jump into Spherify, and you just get a couple layers.
And it's
like,
fast in the viewport, which I was really surprised, like how interactive everything still is, which is important to me. Like I want to see it. I don't want to have to render it to see what it looks like. The fact that it looks like this in the viewport.
The R19
nice.
viewport is like so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I've got one last chunk to go here until we pass it off to Chad. And that is, I want to go and try and make something a little more practical. Actually, no, it goes to Nick after that.
Oh,
sorry.
There you go.
Okay, so I just want to show you trying to do something a little more practical instead of just something so abstract. So I've got a similar setup here that's very similar to the stuff we were already talking about. I've got a cylinder fall off, just kind of like the sphere, moving around, wiggling around, doing its own thing. And it's got a plane effector, which is pushing it up. So exact same setup we've already been talking about. But let's go ahead and let's go ahead and turn on a cylinder. So it's almost like the cylinder is passing along a surface of some water. So let's go ahead and just apply this nice shiny water material so we can get some nice real-time feedback, some nice reflections in the viewport. But let's start making this a little more interesting. And we got so much to cover that we're just going to kind of turn on these checkboxes as we go. So right now you see the cylinder field is just being added into the scene. So, okay, that's all well and good. In fact, why don't we not make that look like water until we've got a little bit more going on? Let's go ahead and turn on a freeze. Now, inside of the modifier layers, there is a very powerful new node here, which is called freeze. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And it is set to grow. And right away, you're going to see when I rewind it, wherever this is pushed up, it's now growing to the rest of the scene. And there are so many fun, different, crazy combinations on there.
When I first saw the freeze option, I thought, okay, I know what it does. It probably just makes, freezes everything wherever it is. Like, I'll bypass and I'll find something more interesting. And then Chris showed me what freeze actually did was, like, it does growing, it does subtraction, it does all these.
It does, like, some blurring. It's super crazy.
It's really, really powerful. It's one of those hidden ones that once you start playing with it, it does stuff that we never could do before.
So this is just applying the cylindrical field, but that is less interesting maybe than shooting a bunch of particles at it. So we got the Cinema 4D particle emitter here, and let's go ahead and make sure that that is being fed in right here. So I'm just feeding in particles now as another effect, and I go ahead and hit play, and you'll see that anywhere those strike, it's growing from that point. Okay, so that's a fun effect right away by itself, but let's start making this a little more interesting. I'm going to turn those particles off just so we can focus in a little bit. Let's go ahead and add a delay on here. You already saw the delay. We already had a little bit of smooth going there, so it's kind of like it chilled everything out. So we can go ahead and turn that on, and it's going to smooth out the overall layer here. And if I hit play, it's like, okay, it's the effect we saw, but it's just smoothing it out. But a crazy thing about the way some of these layer up is we have these, not only do we have these blend modes, but it's kind of like this layer, this delay is referencing everything that's underneath it. But it's also kind of like, it's outputting it as a normal. It's kind of like, okay, I've taken everything below me, applied my effect, and now that's what you're seeing. But we can actually change this blend mode to something like subtract. So now it's like, I am everything that's underneath me modified, and now I'm going to subtract it from everything underneath me. So
it's
based
like
on that,
Photoshop.
Yes. So now we hit play, and you can see that we're actually getting a subtraction again. It's a little crazy. The effect is going a little nuts.
Here we go.
But
now we're talking.
It's now the delayed effect subtracting from the overall growth effect. So now the growth is kind of getting erased out as well. An important detail is this is unclamped. So if you're following along at home, you'd want to turn off clamping. That actually looks better.
That
but
effect is amazing.
Yes, so that's really fun there without clamping. But that can't go below 0. I do want it to be able to go below 0, so I'm going to unclamp it. Let's add on some additional layers. Now, you see, this is all super crazy right now, but I want to chill it out. So a fun way I found to chill it out is to do something like create this solid. That is underneath the field layers thing. It's really straightforward. It's just a solid color, and it's just set to black. It's set down to a value of 0. So if I turn that on, if we crank it up all the way, it's overriding. Nothing's happening. But if we start fading this back a little bit, then you're going to start seeing the effect come in again. And all of that craziness, that overwhelming craziness is going away because every refresh, every frame, it's pushing everything down a little bit.
So you're essentially mixing a solid on top that's sort of like a layer in Photoshop, like a black layer, and you're sort of messing with the opacity of it.
Exactly, but it's applied over time. So every refresh, it's cycling back around and looking at what happened before. So that means we're getting this nice automatic fall off happening. So all that craziness has now translated into this great ripple, like these little tides going off both ends. So we can make this even more fun by putting a spring on here. I'm going to apply this one before. It's just a spring with some 35%. Turn that on. And now it's going to get a little crazy. So, okay, let's chill it out a little bit. We've got this nice control here.
Chill out. Calm it down.
And now we're getting some nice overlap. And let's go ahead and turn on this delay. And we get this is just another spring on the top. Oh, and let's go ahead and make it all watery looking. So now we've got these liquid effects, and I can go ahead and let's chill it out a little bit more just because it's a little overwhelming with...
Too stormy.
Yeah, there we go. So now, just by combining a couple of these different fields on here, we're getting these effects. But now we can go ahead and turn on right here. I've got a sphere, and it's just kind of hopping up and down, and there's a spherical field on that one. So by turning that on, and in the plane effector, let's make sure that it is acknowledging it. Now that is just added. That's just added, and it's making splashes wherever that strikes.
That's craziness.
We can go ahead and turn those emitters back on again, and turn the folder on, which is just it's just slowing it down a little because it was a little intense. So turn on that one, and now we've got these little water droplets hitting everywhere, and all the stuff is just combining and layering, and like there's so many fun, weird, abstract MoGraphy things we can do, but we can also use this in very practical ways. And as a very, very quick final thing here on, before we pass it on, I'm going to go and make a sphere. Let's go ahead and change the blending mode on it, and I'm going to give it a whole bunch of segments just so we got something to work with. I'm going to move it down, and now instead of applying all this to that sphere, why don't we pause it? Why don't we go ahead and drop the sphere in this hierarchy, apply the plane to it, and let's also put some smoothing on it. And let's go ahead and delete the plane. So now, instead of the plane, all I did was transfer that entire rig over to the sphere. We have to wait for it to strike it a little bit. But as these hit, it's going to now apply the same effect, and it's actually going to travel down the side of the sphere. Everything, it's such a great setup. But you see what I meant? Like, you can kind of visualize it's a lot simpler on a flat plane, and now it's like, okay, cool, I got the concept. Now apply it to something bigger, something more complex.
Yeah, this was when Chris showed me this, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to understand the power of fields. It's not just fall-offs and more fall-offs. It's the ability to combine this stuff together.
So I'm going to pass it off.
Yeah, Chad's coming in, show you some of his favorite fields, scenes, and then I'm going to show you some of mine as well, and then we're going to move on to another favorite feature of ours in R20. But Chad, what do you got for fields?
Well, so for me, when I started looking at fields, Chris gave me a great piece of advice. He was like, don't try to like do some crazy, because he was doing crazy stuff like that, and it's really like, I can't wrap my brain around that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to think of a thing that makes sense to me that's super simple. I want to have somebody walking through snow, right? I just want a character, and I want the snow to step where they step. I want it to like, tamp down where he's walking. And with fields, that is extremely easy to do. And not only do we have the control, because all we're doing right now is using this field, right? And this field is actually looking for, if I actually come over to this displacer, we can see we have a shader field, which is just giving me that general noise on my snow. We have a shoes field. Now, there's not really a shoes field, but I named it shoes field, so I would remember. I'm not
You just make your own field, Chad.
Exactly. I just made the shoes field. It's going to be coming out. But all this is doing is basically looking at this vertex, the vertex of this character's feet, and saying anywhere where I come in contact with this plane, I am going to push it down.
So it's just looking at the geometry of that character?
Exactly. And now what we do is we also have this effect where we can delay it, we can decay it. So if I want, let's say, the shoes, maybe he's getting some sort of like cotton or something. He's walking in cotton for whatever reason. I don't know, a field of cotton. I don't know.
Yeah, you got the cotton candy
floors. There you go. He's got candy floors. And so now wherever he's walking and it steps away, it goes back to that original shape. Now you could drive a vertex map with this. So everywhere he walks, maybe it shows like wet concrete or grass or something like that. But the possibilities here are really pretty amazing. The other thing that I love about fields is how it relates to some third-party rendering. So in this scene, I've got a very simple face and a torus. And one thing that I've always wanted to be able to do in Redshift and Arnold and whatnot is do proximity maps. I want an object to actually influence the shader that I'm using. So what we can do now with the ability of fields is I can have something like this, and I can move this. Why am I hitting play? This isn't an animation. I can move this torus over the face of our character, and all it's doing is triggering this vertex map. Now, this vertex map can be read by Arnold. So let's go ahead and open up Arnold. We're just going to grab our IPR window. I'm going to drag it over to the side, and let's just make it a little bit bigger, maybe like 60%. And now everywhere, let's find a slightly better angle. And now everywhere this vertex map is yellow, it's triggering a shader change. So why is this powerful? Because every time you want to sort of blend between two different materials and you want it to be triggered by geometry, let's say a building, and maybe under the awning you want it to be dirty. Well, that's always changing. We'll just put a box there and use this technique to reveal a dirtier texture. Now, this is a much sort of nightmare-inducing render, I understand, but it's where my head goes. It's just me. But this is really hard to do without R20, without fields. This is extremely hard to do. And this is also, it doesn't have to be third party. The vertex map shader will work in physical as well. So it's just a whole lot of opportunity that opens up.
That is so
cool. And even this, you're just feeding a torus in there, so it's seeing the volume of the torus, but that could be particles flying in. This
Absolutely.
Could be being driven by it could be driven by shaders and fall-offs. And
yeah, we could add another object into this if we wanted to. We're gonna go crazy here. Well, let's grab that field. Or the vertex map has fields. So this is the power. I'm just, okay, cool. I'm just gonna, what do I do? I guess maybe I just drag this in and have it say, I don't know, add. Does that sound right? All right, cool. Well, let me just hide this in the viewport and see if it works. And it hopefully will. Did it go away? Yeah, there we go. And now we're actually able to add another shape to this to get even more detail into that model. So your brain starts thinking of all these great ways that you can combine things. Both awesome. on an animation level and on a rendering level.
That's so good. Well, let me jump in. I want to show just a couple scenes using fields, and then we'll move on to some of the other awesome features of R20. And what I instantly do whenever there's a new feature, so for example, last year with all the new Voronoi features, and the year before, what I always try to do is not just see what the new feature does, but how does the new feature combine with stuff I already know to make it even better? So when the fracture came out, of course, my brain is like, does it work with dynamics? Can I animate this stuff on with MoGraph? And of course, the answer was yes. Because they think about that. How do we make sure all these things work together? So when the new fields comes out, and I'm playing around, and Chris is showing me some of these effects, these liquid effects and all this stuff, the first thing that comes into my mind is, does it work with dynamics? Kind of one-track mind here. I'm obsessed with dynamics. And so I started playing around with that. And let me open this up here. It's already open. Yeah, let's open it again. It's so good, we could open it twice. All right, so this scene represents a lot of what Chris was showing you as far as the displacer. But you can see how simple this scene is. And so instead of using a plane effector, we just used a displacer here. But the results are very similar. In fact, everything works together. But what is happening here is the clones are coming down. So we have a sphere that has a dynamic tag on it. Our clones are coming down and coming in contact with our other sphere. And everywhere that they do, the geometry of the clones is forcing geometry out, which makes for these bumpy kind of pieces here. So what we can do is come into our displacer and say, let's do this more. Let's go like 60 instead, and it's going to push even further out. And you can see the more we do that, the higher the spikes get. So let me really crank this just so you could see a little bit crazy.
Whoa.
And in fact, some of them are going inside the sphere. It's like happening so fast. Of course, you can always go into your settings. Now, here's a quick, I know it's early, but there's a fun drinking game. This is one of my first times using a PC. For those of you playing at home, you know this is a big deal for me. And I'll often hit the wrong keys, and you might see a Windows screen pop up instead of what I wanted to do. So if that happens, I know it's early. Maybe take a shot. Maybe just a coffee. Espresso.
Yeah, espresso shot, yeah.
So you can see, with everything happening here, what I'm going to try to do is go into our settings. I did it right the first time. Lucky for your liver. And I'm going to go into the dynamic settings, go to expert, and just say add more steps per frame. And this is just going to make my dynamics a little bit more accurate. But you can see now that that
was a close call.
That was a close call. Almost need a new camera lens for that one.
We have to buy a new camera lens.
So not only, you can see, not only are the clones interacting with our geometry, but they're also interacting with the texture. So just like you can move geometry, and of course this works with clones, but it also works with textures as well. So it's built into the fields that color also works. So if we go into our fields here, and this is it's a different fields for this one, but you can actually adjust the color. Driving a vertex map. Of course, this works with clones. You could change the color of clones depending on how close an object is. So for me, the lesson is always great. It's like, does it work with other parts of cinema? And the answer is almost always yes. So you could, just like Chris showed, you could add the particle emitter and change things based on where particles are. You could use it with geometry. You could use it with dynamics. And of course, it also works with volumes, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So with all that, opportunity and what was my better word than opportunity? I had a better one.
I have no idea. Freedom?
Freedom's good. That's turning into a different lecture. But
possibilities.
Possibilities. Thank you, Chad.
Yes.
I'm so glad you're here.
That's why I'm here.
Possibilities is what this is. So it's like early on, we're going to see some basic stuff with clones and what we could do. But this is one of those features that we're going to see new things. Every month, we're going to combine these things in new ways. We have no clue what we're in for yet.
Yeah, scratching the surface.
Scratching the surface. So let's move to another favorite feature. Chad, do you want to talk about nodes?
Nodes. Let's do nodes.
All right. Who wants to learn about nodes?
No,
right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Yes.
Awesome. I came to the right place.
That's right.
So one of my absolute favorite new things in R20 is that they've introduced a node material editor, which I've been waiting for quite a while for. And now it's here, and I've been playing with it, and I'm here to say it is definitely one of the best, if not the best, node material editor I have used out of any 3D software that I've come in contact with. And the reason being is they've really thought about everything that I like about all the previous ones I've used. It's a really well-designed interface. So here we have a pretty simple scene that's sort of inspired by Rick's University videos. He did a lot of great candy stuff. I don't know if you saw that stuff. Well, I wanted to make my own candy shader, And so right off the bat, before I jump into the madness, not madness, it's actually very elegant and clean. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that I tell you this. If you double click in here, you can create a regular material. You do not have to work in nodes if you don't want to. If you want to just dip your toe into the nodes, totally fine. But know this. There is a really great material called the Uber material. Now, what the Uber material is it's actually a very well-constructed version of your normal physical shader, all done in nodes. And it has everything that you're used to seeing, right? But if you're like me and you just want to dive in and see what's what, you can come over here and create a node material from scratch. Now, this node material is going to be very basic. It's going to be the building blocks for building your own materials, right? So that's where I started messing around. All right, so let's give you a quick tour. I'm going to give you a quick tour of the interface because I think it's important, and I'm not going to go too far into it. My favorite bits are the ability to search for assets. Now, you look in here and you're saying, there's a lot of stuff in here. Do I have to know what all this stuff is? The answer is no, you don't. You just need to know what you want to do. You need to be able to say, well, I know I want a checkerboard. Let me hit the node command button, which is this handy little pop-up search that I absolutely love. That's
Node commander.
That's the node commander. All hail the node commander. And so then you can just start typing checker, hit enter, there's your checkerboard.
Can I call you the node commander from now on?
Absolutely not. Yeah, you can, sure.
Oh, yes.
So you can just start to create things very easily, very quickly using that node commander. And if you notice here over on the left, all of the nodes that I've created are all quick access right here. So if you have a very complex shader tree, maybe you've got materials spread out all over the place, and you just want to be able to select something quickly, you can do that right over here in the node panel, right there, right? Okay, so that is a bit of that, and you can navigate it very easily. It's very snappy. This little search thing down here allows you to sort of navigate quickly around your big scene. You can search things. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can group things. You can display nodes. You can hide nodes. You can do just about anything you could think of. So all right, let's dive into this a little bit more complex material, this candy material here. I'm going to double-click that. We're going to look at this material. All right, so in addition to the nodes, and over here on the right, we have our tabs, which you then can like start to shift-click and look at everything that you want to see, or maybe you just want to see the inputs, maybe you just want to see the context. In our case, I'll just go ahead and turn on all these. So this is looks like a pretty complex material, and I bet you're thinking, well, he's doing a lot of stuff in here for a swirl node. Like, why didn't he just use the swirl node? Well, I built my own swirl node, and like that's the power of this.
You would.
I know, right? So what am I doing with the swirl node? Well, the swirl node is actually just a UV transform. So a UV transform node, which looks like this crazy, like weird, purpley, blue, yellowy thing, is actually the UV space of your texture, right? So what this is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to offset the texture on your object in the material editor, not having to actually move the UVs at all. This is great for randomization. It's great for manipulating your textures to get them a little noisy. But in my case, all I'm doing here is I'm just going to disconnect this so you can see it a little bit better. So this right here is just like a star pattern using the new gradient, which I hope we have time to show, but it's such a fantastic new addition to the gradient tool. Has just been revamped. It's great. All right, so we've got this ramp, and it's just pointing out like that. We need to make it swirl. So how do we do that? Well, I thought to myself, well, all right, I probably need to take maybe this UV transform node and plug it into well, it's only letting me plug it into context, so I guess it goes there. And boom, I'm swirling. But why am I swirling? That's because I'm feeding in a circular ramp. So that's going from 1 to 0, 1 being white, 0 being black. Just a circle ramp, that's all it is. But you point this into the transform node's local rotation, and what that does is it tells everywhere it's white to rotate whatever degrees I've told it to rotate.
It's like spinning more in the center than in the outside.
Exactly. I'm smearing it. I'm smearing the texture right there. And I can start to layer this up just like any other node material editor. And if you're new to nodes, then you might want to start a little bit slow and like build your way up. But when you start to dive in, it becomes very much like compositing. It becomes very much like After Effects or Nuke or Fusion. All the principles are here. If you want to add a texture, it's a simple layer node that I just dropped our logo on top of it. And then I layered some noises and whatnot. And then I output it to 2 different colors so that I could have a green mint and a peppermint. No, wait, no, that's the peppermint. That's the spearmint.
What flavor is green, though?
This is spearmint.
Oh, spearmint.
Yeah.
Okay.
We covered this in the rehearsals.
Dang it, I forgot.
All right, so okay, I'm just scratching the surface here. It's immense. There's a lot to it. but it can be as simple or as complex as you want. So let's just, I'm going to try to go really fast. So you saw that. Let's say I'm working with Rick, and Rick did all that great candy stuff on Cineversity. And Rick's like, you know what? I want to use that swirl thing that you made. Can you send that to me? Yeah, no problem. I'm going to grab all these nodes. I'm going to group them, right? So now I could group these just for my own sanity to keep it not messy.
So everything's still in there.
Everything is still in here.
But
in fact, I can like open that up, and I can like actually get in there if I want to. But what's even cooler, and now we just went into that little group, and so it's all still here, and we can all get back to where we were, and everybody's happy. But I don't want him to have all that control. Like, I don't want him to mess with it. I don't trust Rick. That's basically what I'm saying. So I want to give him one control to control my little swirl node that I made, right? I'm going to hit right-click, and I'm going to say, create asset. Well, that sounds cool. Yeah, let's do that. So let's just call it swirl Rick, hit enter. And now I'm going to edit that asset. I'm just going to right-click and say edit asset. It's going to take me into this asset. And you can see now, this is all the, right now, I haven't published any controls for Rick, which could be good, but I'll give him one control. I'm going to right-click over here, and I'm going to say add input. And I'm going to connect this input right into the value. Actually, let's just expand this guy so we can see all the ports. And this little remap node is basically taking the ramp and saying, I'm remapping my value of black, and I'm remapping my value of white. So what I'm going to allow Rick to do with this little control is he's going to be able to spin that swirl more. He's going to give it more swirls. And I'm giving him that control now. So if I come over to the create, and I say save version, and I say, yep, okay, Rick, you're good to go. And so I could send this to him. I could put it on the server. I could email it to him, whatever. And if he opens up his material editor, and he invokes the node commander.
Node commander.
And he types in swirl. There is swirl Rick as my own asset that he can now bring in and use exactly how he wants.
Oh, it actually goes in the assets build.
Yes, it's actually going to show up here, and you can save these. You can wrap them up. You can sell them. You can do all sorts of great things with your own little assets that you've created. So now he has this control. So I've given him. I didn't name it for him, so I didn't make it very easy. But now he can type in like 6, and he's going to get 6 swirls. If he only wants 2 swirls, like maybe he wants 2 swirls. Well, there's 2 swirls, Rick. You're good to go. But it's a lot of fun to play with. I recommend just diving in, exploring the Uber shader. They have a lot of presets.
So on a team, somebody could actually be building these nodes and building these more complex materials, and then hand it off to someone else in the team and say, look, I exposed the important parts.
Yep,
like here's how noisy, or here's a color shader, and all the magic happens in the background.
Yeah, I mean, and what's great, like if you have a client that has very specific colors, you could expose maybe just those colors that are brand specific, so there's nobody actually using an illegal color or doing anything like that. You can lock it down or you can open it up. It's really up to you.
And then even here, you're publishing out these controls to a specific node, but you could go a level deeper and publish this out to the final material.
Yes, you can actually create, I just did it with a texture. Now imagine doing that with a shader. You could build your own car paints. You could build your own skin. You could build all of your own materials exactly how your pipeline or you like to work. Send them to your friends. Do whatever. Christmas gifts,
That's a good Christmas gift.
Yeah. Stocking stuffers, maybe.
Node of the Month Club.
Yeah. There we go. I think we just hit on a new concept.
Somebody get the URL.
Somebody at home, grab that. Yeah, so nodes, I love them.
Well, speaking of at home, you're reminding me, we're sharing some of these scene files. If you want to get some of the scene files from today and future tutorials that we have planned for R20, make sure you go to grayscalegorilla.com/Siggraph. You can sign up there, and we're going to be sending some of these scene files. So for those of you online, because I know we have a huge group here, but for those of you online as well, you're right next to your computer. Make sure you head over there and sign up. And thanks online for watching, too, by the way. Hello to my wife. Thanks, baby.
What should we cover next? We have a lot of stuff to...
We have some more stuff. So why don't we
instances we have?
We have instances. Why don't I talk quickly about volumes?
Yes.
And then I think we'll have some time for instances.
Do it.
Is that all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So volumes. Who's seen the volumes demos? Has anyone seen the videos yet? So originally, when I started learning and hearing about volumes, I was like, well, that's for modeling stuff, and I've never been interested in modeling. It's always been very, a little too technical for me, and a little too tedious, and if you messed it up, you had to go all the way back to the beginning. I just didn't understand it, so I was like, volumes, that's like modeling stuff, and I won't be playing with it. And the more I played with it, the more I realized that it's one of my I'm up here showing you volumes because it's one of my favorite new features along with fields in R20. So what is volumes and what does it do? So let's just make a new scene file. Let's see if I can do this first try. No. Oh, love it.
Take a drink.
Take a drink. All right, so what are volumes and what do they do? So the simple way to look at volumes is it's a new way to model. In fact, the more I played with it, the more I realized it's like MoGraph for modeling. And once I understood that you can just combine things together to build shapes, I got way more interested in what volumes are. So really simply, let's just start I start everything with a cloner, so let's do that. And let's drop some spheres in here. And we're going to, oh, there it is.
And there's a cube.
I loved cubes. We got a grid array. We have a weird refresh thing here. Let's see. Make sure it's all good. Okay, so we have our objects. We're going to do classic Nick start. This is how I start every scene file. No matter what I'm working on, I do this first. So, all right, so we have some random cubes. Let's just add a little bit of rotation as well. And now I started to see this stuff with other third-party renders, the ability to combine these things together, not just make them a solid piece of geometry, but wherever they touch, to be able to round the corners and get these little, almost like it was molded from clay. I've always loved that look, but it was always not easy to do and almost impossible to do with built-in cinema tools. And now it's this easy. So we have our cloner object, and so the first thing we need to do is go up into the volume menu and pick your volume builder. This is the first piece. So drop any object, and it works with clones, in your volume builder, and you essentially get a bunch of voxels.
Minecraft.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, no, you got it absolutely right.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're saying it. We're all thinking it. Minecraft, baby. Okay,
I know,
so we have now these voxels. Well, when we hit render, there's nothing here. This is just to roughly show us what our scene is looking like. The second part of the puzzle is to add a volume mesher and put the builder in the mesher. Now, when you do that, oh, I'm using a mouse, folks. That's my on a PC instead of a Wacom on a Mac. So, pardon me a little bit. So, okay, so you get the idea now. Now, this is rough. We're going to smooth this out, and I'm going to show you how. But now it's almost like a combination of metaballs and volumes and the ability to build geometry very simply. So, what can we do to clean this up? Well, one of the main things you want to look at is your voxel size. You remember those cubes that we had when we had this in Minecraft mode? You can shrink the voxel size right here, and wherever you do that, it'll smooth out your shapes. So you can see now we have much more fine geometry to work with here. And make the voxels smaller, and then where they touch, there's less of that goo going on. So you can see we still have some edges here to work with. What can we do to smooth this out even more? Well, they made it really easy. There's a button right here called Smooth Layer, and you add it,
there you go.
And it instantly like blobifies everything. It rounds all the corners. And what's great is this works in motion. And if you've played with other ways of creating this, it's usually very staticky, and it doesn't. It's always flickering. This does not do that. It's very, very smooth. In fact, if we go into our random effector and add some noise, add some index noise, and I'm going to reduce the amount of voxel size just for this demo, so we get some nice fast playback. This is very quick, and we hit play. You'll see all these clones are actually coming in together and creating new geometry as it builds. And I know Chris has a file that's using this technique that actually builds on geometry. So to me, it was the idea that I can now have an idea of maybe modeling something and start to build it out of raw elements. So really quickly, I wanted to show you one more thing, which is just like with fields, this works with everything. Almost everything you put inside of your volume builder just works. So what else can we do? Well, we can, let's grab a spline.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's going to get funky. So let's grab a star spline, and I'm just going to turn all this off for now. And we have our star spline. I'm going to go to MoGraph. I'm going to add a cloner here. Oh, somebody take a drink.
Take a drink.
Windows key. Hello. We're going to clone this star. We're going to use the radial, and we're going to turn up the count. And let's go into our cloner.
go to transform, and rotate these around a bit. So we have this interesting little star shape. Well, what can we do with this? Well, we can literally drop it into the same builder, and when we turn that on, it's adding the geometry of all the stars. Now, what's cool is we can go into our builder, and I'm going to put it under our smooth layer and turn off our smooth layer just for a second. You can go into each individual object and say how many voxels are a part of this spline. So under radius, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit, go to something like 6, and now we're going to get more narrow pieces. So let me just turn off the other cloner just for a second, just so we can deal with one at a time. I'm going to turn on our mesher and see what we get. Okay, same thing. We have this somewhat messy object, but again, we could smooth it out. Now, we may need to adjust our smooth layer to something like mean curve just to start to get it. It looks like we need maybe even smaller voxels as well. So let's go to something like 3. And again, we'll refresh. And we're starting to get that geometry. Now, you can see those little balls. You could actually see the little facets, whatever those are called.
Metaballs. Well, they're not metaballs. They're voxels.
Voxels, yeah, they have a name, right? So how do you get rid of that? Well, you can come into the cloner, or you can come into the builder, I'm sorry, and go to that layer and start to add more density to that mesh. So you could say 0.5, and boom, this will automatically clear up. So look at how smooth that geometry is. And just like just like the cloners, you can come in and animate these parameters and move these things around, and it will blob and mesh together in almost real time, right? This is very, very quick. And again, if you wanted to just add a piece behind this, let's add the sphere. Let's say we want you to be a part of this object in the back. Well, you can see right now the sphere isn't really interacting. It's just kind of floating there. So all we really have to do is drop it in the volume builder. It will automatically add. Let's put it below the smooth layer. And boom, it's automatically meshing. If we zoom in, you can see it's intersecting with this. And
it's
of course,
it's like welded.
Yeah, it's like exactly welded. It's like you get a welder in there to put it together. So, and the last thing, just so you know, you can just come in and add more geometry, obviously, to smooth this out so it's not, the facets aren't showing on your sphere.
Yeah, the volume building is so accurate that you're actually seeing the surfaces of your relatively low resolution sphere, and you had to crank that up because it was reflecting it.
So you can see now as we go through, it's actually molding and coming together. So not only, for this, it's obviously some more abstract kind of blobby shapes. We're going to be seeing a lot of that in the near future. But you can also combine things to create actual objects. And if you can use splines and primitives and combine them together, and don't forget, you can also subtract, just like we did with fields. You could say, wherever this sphere is, I actually want you to subtract. And it's very clean, much cleaner than a bool, and it allows you to create some very, very interesting geometry just with basic shapes. So if a dummy like me can start to play with modeling, which I never would have in the past, I can't wait to see what happens when people start to really dig into this new feature and start to play with volumes.
Yeah, let's see that cloud scene you made.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
So Chris has this amazing scene that combines a few things and adds and uses this volume in more of a MoGraph kind of way. So yeah.
Alrighty, let's see. Okay, yeah, we've got this rig set up here, and let's just pop it open. So we've got this final model here, and I am feeding through a Voronoi fracture, which has been always fun. We've been using that for 2 years now. And inside of there, we have where's the fall off? Okay, in there we're feeding a plane effector and a random effector, and so we've got that plane effector, which itself has fall-offs, and those fall-offs now have fields. If I just hit play, you're going to see that these are just going to shrink. That's all this is doing. And shrinking via a time, what is this called? A time layer. So we have a time layer here, and it's just shrinking everything. But then I'm going to go ahead and turn on a different node we haven't talked about, which is quantize. And what this is going to do is snap that to particular states, and you can see that there's 3 steps. So I could go ahead and click on 4 steps, and now it's going to do 4 in-betweens.
It's like stop motion, almost.
Yeah, so that that there is cool. Now let's add on this delay, which is just a spring. So you see it's snapping to these quantized states, but by putting a little bit of spring on there, it's going to jump to those states, but then have a little wiggle. So it's like, okay, now you can feel that transitioning.
That's
it's like,
cool.
okay, that's cool. But you know what? I don't want it to disappear. I want it to appear. So we can go ahead and just turn on an invert here, and now instead of shrinking away, it is growing on. So, okay.
I didn't know about the invert.
Dude, yeah. dude, inverts.
So
yeah, now it's
So
animating.
whatever, even an animation that's going forward, that's
inverting time.
Literally what it
inverted
does.
time, yes.
It's
So
inverting
Yeah,
time.
and there's no keyframes here. So okay, this is all this is amazing right here. And fields, there's so many crazy ways of combining it. But that's the basic animation. You see how quickly I can change any of those parameters. But now using the volume builder, I can go ahead and turn that on, and we should pretty much instantly see this turn
Just
into
move
a
the
proper volume.
viewport
Oh, yeah.
and it'll pop up.
And then, let's just go straight to the mesher to see the final, because we got to go fast and cover all the files. So if we go ahead and turn that on and hit play, now I have converted that Voronoi fracture with that final model into these blobs with that animation with no keyframes, and we just see this slowly grow and
That's
build
so
on.
awesome. That's cool.
So fun, so straightforward. And you know what? We've got a rig now. Let's go ahead and delete that cloud and instead put in a different cinema primitive here. So we've got that. I'll just drop that in. And then rewind, and we can go ahead and play, and we're going to see a brand new shape get grown on. And I didn't have to change anything; just swap out the model.
That's
Boom,
awesome.
Different model right away. And then I had one last super quick volume thing to talk about. I've got my 3D printer. I've been having a lot of fun playing with that. And something that's kind of a nightmare with 3D printing is a lot of the softwares want you to feed them volumes, and they don't like intersecting geometry. So I've got this entire character I designed here. And let's go ahead and hopefully, give it a second. It's a big, complex model. It's carefully built, so each individual part is a volume, but it's a big, complex model, and 3D printing would not like this. And a couple months ago, I 3D printed him, and I had to use bools and subtract every shape from every other shape, and it took forever.
No, thank you.
Yes. So now, instead, why don't we just
There
go
must
ahead?
be a better way.
Let's go ahead and grab a volume builder, and I'm going to go ahead and just drop our resolution down to 4. And we're going to drop that into our volume builder, and let's go ahead and grab our volume mesher, and let's just jump right to the punch here and make that editable because I want my final model. And we're going to give it a second because this is a pretty complicated model here. And let's see.
Just move the viewport.
Yep. There we go. So now I can get rid of that, and we've got our final model here, and it is a volume. It's a perfect volume right there. I didn't have to do any bools. I could have cranked up the resolution to really make that sharp, but we can go inside him, and he's now built as a perfect volume. It's all of the volume stuff. It's like the perfect combination of like a metaball and a bool, and both those things were kind of a pain to use in the past, and now it's the best version of those, able to be combined
That's
in
great.
all these amazing, insane ways.
That's awesome. Well, I think, do we have like 3 minutes, Chet? Can we do 3 minutes of instances? Because Chet has an amazing video.
You might have to hold this for me.
Let me get you.
Yeah, just switch me on. Put it on my tiny bald head.
There we go.
Be careful, you still
Oh my
wire
God,
them.
you're attached to me. All right, we're
I
gonna go
got you.
fast. Multi-instances, right? So we've all wanted to clone millions and millions of objects, and now we can. So first off, I need to start this demo really quickly by talking about the Alembic cache, because the Alembic cache has been completely revamped. The Alembic system is great now. We're able to retime. We're able to easily grab caches. So I took this walking character that I made in Adobe Fuse, I believe is the name, and then I brought it into Mixamo, and I just downloaded this walk cycle. Very simple to do. Hit me later if you want to find out more about how to do that. So we need to make this guy into Alembic. We could just easily just grab all of his pieces and just come over here and right-click now. We can right-click and Bake As Alembic. We can Bake As Alembic and keep everything live in the scene, or if you're like me and you just want to work destructively because you live on the edge, you're going to say bake directly to the Alembic and delete the thing that I was just baking. And now I have an Alembic walk cycle. I can pass it off to any other artist in the pipeline, and they get the exact same thing. All right, that's the basis that I'm going to show you. Now I'm going to move into what I did with it. So let's just go into my little crowd here. Bing, bang, boom. And we've got some weird people walking along this, I don't know what this is, a log in space. Why not? So when I started playing with the multi-instancing...
Log in space is where the node commander lives.
He lives in the center of that log. So what I wanted to test is I really wanted to stress test how many clones I could put in here and maintain a decent frames per second, right? Because we want to be able to have that fast viewport experience. So I started messing around. I'm like, oh, could it handle like 60 people walking? Well, yeah, it handled it pretty well, and I'm actually using the multi-instance object mode right now. But if I wanted to bring it up to like maybe 120, that's still pretty good. Let's see how far we can go. Let's go to 300 people walking. That's still pretty good. These are all Alembic caches. There's 3 of them that I just retimed slightly to look slightly different. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm getting more confident. But as you start to increase it, of course, you know, these are Alembic meshes. I can go 600. I'm still getting 9 frames a second. That's great. But check this out. If I decide I want to move to a lesser viewport mode, maybe I want to work in bounding box, boom, I'm back to 30 frames per second.
I love how you can still see the walk. Like, it's not just a cube.
It's like a weird walk cube.
Yeah, they've built like a little walkie cube for you.
And if that's you know, maybe you have more now. Now you're able to crank this up to maybe like 1,200 people in your crowd. Maybe even, I don't want to go too far. It's dangerous, right? Oh, I'm going to do it anyway.
Hey, it's the last scene file. Let's break this baby.
So 2,000 people walking. Well, that's now we're starting to get a little slow. So let's move into matrix mode, which is just going to put matrix objects where every walker is. So now I'm getting that feedback again. But at any time, if I hit render on this, let's just grab a render region, you're going to see that each one of those matrices is a person walking. And you could do this in point mode as well. So, all right, that's one thing is, you know, Alembic, yeah, that's great, but let's see something a little bit more practical for this sort of thing, which is going to be a city. Let's just make a pretty little city. Let's just, space bar, take a drink. All right, let's hide this guy up here and hide this guy. So these are the Happy Toolbox models that we sell on our website. And I made a little city, and I was just like, well, let's see how far we can push this thing. I mean, there's not that many clones in here right now, but if I jump into the city and I'm working in object mode, I could go pretty far. We're at 20 by 20. Now, you're going to have to do some math for this because I'm terrible at it.
Crank it up, baby.
If I do like 50 by 50, of course, like that's not a problem at all. But if I go any higher, I'm going to start to get a little scared. So I'm going to actually move right into point mode. So every point is now a building. So at render time, that's going to be a building, those points. But right here in the viewport, I'm super fast. I'm getting like 300 frames per second. So now let me just zoom out a little bit. Let's see how far we can push this. Let's go like 200 buildings by 200 buildings. So what's 200 by 200? Somebody in the audience? Nobody? 200 by 200? What?
40,000? Do I hear 50,000?
Sold. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we got here when we draw an interactive render region over this. And we're going to see if our city truly does show up. And there it is. There is a lot of buildings. In fact, let's just zoom in so we can see those buildings a little bit better. But what this is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to start to clone grass, trees, rocks, characters walking on weird logs in space.
Everything I've always wanted to do with my clones.
Of course, that's on your list. Let's see how far we can go, right? All right, this is the last thing we're going to show, so let's just do 500. What's 500 times 500? Somebody.
500 times 500.
All right, here we go. It's
$1.
It's going to take a second. There, it already got it. Look at that. Let me hit H on that so we can see everything, and we're just going to wait for this render to view to catch up to us. But
it's going to be like a gray blob.
But, you know, actually, what I'm more impressed with is is just that viewport speed has not changed at all.
That's
and we've got
amazing.
500 by 500. Let's go to 1,200 by 1,200.
All right, they're gonna kick us off here in a second.
The developers are getting mad at me right now. I'll leave it there. I'm not going to push my luck. So that right there is really incredible for trees, rocks, grass, whatever you want to clone around in many times, buildings. Anyway, R20.
Yeah,
wrap us out.
We are almost, we are running a little over time, so I just quickly wanted to say thanks again to Maxon for having the three of us here to bring us all three on stage together and learn. So please give it up to Maxon.
Thank you, Maxon.
Please check out the site, Greyscalegorilla.com/Siggraph. We're going to be handing out some of these scene files. And again, R20, the possibilities are starting to become more and more endless. You can combine these things together. So give it up again to Maxon for creating this amazing piece of software. And thank you once again for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.